Countries that rely heavily on markets tend to have high values for the index of economic freedom and freedom from perceived corruption. Countries that rely heavily on command and control usually have low values for the index of economic freedom and freedom from perceived corruption. Here's a heat map for the index of economic freedom in 2014. The green end of the scale shows countries that have relatively high levels of freedom, the dark green being the most free. Countries in the purple end of the scale tend to be economically unfree, the dark purple being worth in a sort of mauve or whatever it is, and this is sort of an orangey thing. I don't have many colors in my repertoire. You can look at it. Australia, very free. Hong Kong stuck in there. Singapore, very free. Switzerland, very free. The United States, Canada, much of Scandinavia tend to be pretty free, but not as free as Australia and some of the other countries. Countries with very little economic freedom are the ones in this dark purple, parts of South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, some of the folks there in the Mideast. North Korea pops up there. See the difference between North Korea and South Korea. A second indicator of the reliance on market system is freedom from perceived corruption. Corrupt countries tend to be, corruption means that the country does not follow well the rule of law, and when the rule of law doesn't work, markets don't work very well. So again, we're going to see countries here that it goes from a light yellow to sort of a dark red. Canada, that's not much corruption. Scandinavian countries, not much corruption. Australia, not much corruption. United States, a little bit of corruption. Europe, a little bit of corruption. But Russia, lots of corruption. These countries here in Africa, way lots of corruption. Some countries in the Mideast or Asia, again, much more corruption. You can sort of see generally that North America and Europe tend to be relatively free from corruption, while Asia, with some exceptions such as Japan, and Africa tend to be more corrupt. A country's standard of living, in the long run at least, depends upon its ability to produce goods and services. And the best measure of a country's ability to produce goods and services is this thing called gross domestic product per capita. And you'll study gross domestic product when you take Econ 211. Here's a heat map of countries here's a heat map of gross domestic product in 2009. The dark blue range have high levels have high standards of living. Their GDP per capita is 30,000 or higher, or actually the dark blue is 30,000 or higher. Light blue is 12,000, 30,000. Australia, pretty rich. New Zealand, pretty rich, but not as much. Japan, rich. Most of Europe, Scandinavia, rich. United States, Canada, rich. Okay. As you get to lighter and lighter shades of blue, you become less and less rich. There's Russia, Brazil. As you get towards red end, income per capita is 0 to 500. You've got lots of countries in Africa and some countries in Southern Asia. If you go back and compare the maps, you're going to see lots of similarities. The United States is very rich. It's also relatively free from corruption and is economically free. Japan, lots of market activity. That's the wrong one. Relatively free from corruption as well, and a high standard of living. Russia, Russia's got a reasonable standard of living, but it's more corrupt, and it relies less on markets. How about just do an example? North Korea, South Korea. North Korea relies heavily on markets. South Korea relies heavily on markets. North Korea doesn't. North Korea is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. South Korea, not so much. And the income levels are striking. Actually, they came in right North Korea, but it is one of the poorest countries in the world. South Korea, on the other hand, is one of the most economically prosperous countries in the world.